Welcome to the Gen Z Show. I am James McLamb, your host, and I am joined today by my favorite co-host, Abby Durham. How are you doing, Abby?
Oh, I'm great, James. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I always get emails when I say you're my favorite co-host from the other co-hosts, asking them what's the deal here and what's going on. But I always want Abby to join me when I know that I may not be on my A game. And I had the second COVID vaccine yesterday, and people had talked about how it might put you down for a couple of days. And so I didn't know if I was going to be on top. So I wanted to make sure that the strongest co-host was there in case I was knocking myself out. So
Well,
welcome that. Thank you for coming and joining me again.
no problem, James.
So today we're joined by Mr. Chaz Jackson. Now, I met Chaz Jackson through some people referring him to me through LinkedIn. That's how you can find a lot of good information nowadays, is through LinkedIn. And saw that he was not only just a motivational speaker, but he had an incredible story of overcoming some early adversity in his life where, because of some poor decision making he had put himself in situations that his choices were leading to bad consequences. And he is able to overcome this. He's a former college athlete, college football player, motivational speaker now, and physical therapist who also is working with a church plant now in the Fort Worth, Texas area. So I was really excited that he agreed to be a part of our show. Abby, tell our audience a little bit about what you think they're going to gain from listening to Mr. Chaz Jackson.
I think you guys should make sure that you listen super close because everywhere we went on this journey and this conversation took us to a really great piece of advice and lots of them. I think my favorite quote out of the whole day, and as soon as he said it, I said, whoa, we got to go back. I got to write this down, is we perform at the level of our belief, not at the level of our potential. And so to build up your self-confidence and to have that self-esteem and to not let adverse situations define you really allows you to succeed in ways you never thought possible.
Now, guys, listen to me real closely. He has made an offer of giving one of his books free to the first person who emails him and refers that they heard this show. So if you'll look down in the show notes, you'll see some information about that. We want to make sure that you take advantage of this free offer to get one of his books, and then free offer to anyone who emails him. If you're not the first, he's giving away other things. So there's a lot of information here. I'm very excited, man, that had joined us today. And I am really proud and pleased to bring to the Gen Z Show, Mr. Chaz Jackson. Chaz, welcome to the Gen Z Show. I really appreciate you joining us as a guest.
Yes, thank you for having me, James. It's such an honor to be on your show.
Well, I reached out to you through LinkedIn, and I was telling Abby before the call started that I kept seeing people on LinkedIn liking this guy's feed, liking what he was saying. And so I looked it up and I said, oh my gosh, this guy's from North Carolina, my home state. He went to Western Carolina. He's a former football player and in physical therapy. There are things that my son is interested in the same area. I said, I want to follow this guy and figure out what's going on. And then I started watching your podcast feeds. I said, hey, I gotta invite this guy on the show. So thank you for that. Now, our audience heard our introduction, but they want to hear from you a little bit about who you are. So introduce yourself to our young Generation Z audience and tell them what they need to know about Chaz Jackson.
Yes, sir. So I wear a bunch of hats, James. I'm a husband, I'm a father of two beautiful daughters, 5 and 2 years old. They keep me on my toes. I'm a podcast host, like you mentioned, Gift and a Give, teach, motivator, certified in physical therapy. And going back on the whole speaking aspect of things, so being a professional speaker, also best-selling author of 2 books, I'm very passionate about youth leadership. And I always tell everyone that I explain what that passion entails with working with our young people is, I'm fired up about helping them find clarity, helping them understand what accountability means, and just finding purpose in life. So I enjoy delivering that through speaking engagements on various platforms, as well as speaking and coaching and training sessions. So I think just in a short spiel of who Chaz Jackson is, that's what I'm passionate about doing and love serving other people.
Well, I noticed that on your site, you've written a book, and the title "Live, Learn, Lead Powerfully." I love that title.
Yes, yes.
That draws you in right immediately. And you talk about in that book, one of the things you talk about is you inspire youth to become the best version of themselves. I love that statement, but some of the people who are listening to us, they might not understand what you mean by the best version of themselves. So what do you mean by that?
So on my podcast, Gift and a Gift, I constantly say we're all gifted differently to make a difference. So I feel we all have a story to share, and I feel that we all have our greatest version of ourselves to share with our generation and the next generation to come. And Live, Learn, Lead Powerfully, I truly believe that book is strategically designed to align anyone's mind towards greatness. And for me, going back to 2012, this book was released in 2019, but 2012, it was beginning to be created. I remember awakening to a car horn behind my fiance's vehicle. I was driving, awakening, had passed out briefly, inches away from a head-on collision, James. Me being a man of faith by the grace of God, I remember turning that wheel to the right. I crashed into a wooden gate. I was arrested on site. I was drinking and driving at the time. And I remember being in a jail cell. And from that 2012 dating back to when Chaz Jackson was born onto this planet, there was a lot of, emotional baggage that I had accumulated up to that scene. And I had put myself in some bad positions, obviously me, being behind the wheel of a car while after drinking, but there was a lot of poor decisions that have been made at that time. And I found myself, in a situation where I didn't have a driver's license. I lost my car, I lost my job due to some poor decisions of drinking. And I found myself in a situation where I was on the verge of giving up. And fast forward a week and a half after that incident, I remember being on the outside of my lawyer's office. I was with my fiance, and she had stayed in the office and was chatting with him a little bit prior to this encounterment outside of the lawyer's office. I went to the bathroom, we was ready to exit. He had already told me, man, because of the trouble that I've got into, I was going to have to face some jail time and some more disciplines. And she had shared something that he told her when I wasn't in the presence. She said that he told her that she should just get away from me. And I was like, wow, why would you say something like that? And she said, because the decisions that I was making, I was just going to drag her down with me. And then, I shared something with her, and I asked her this question. I said, why don't you just leave me? Because in this period of time, and, I had accumulated all of this emotional baggage, what I call it, negative emotional baggage, that, wasn't living out to my greatest version or the best version of myself at the time. And she said something to me, guys, that just really transformed and really got me to thinking in a more clear basis, to being on an intentional verge to make some changes in my life. And after I asked her, why don't you leave me? She said, Chaz, I see something in you that you don't see in yourself. And I was like, wow, that was the first time that was ever said to me. And obviously, I had to be intentional, like I mentioned before, about making some changes in my life. But I marked that as a moment that something that ticked inside of my head. I often say to a lot of my young people that they have a seed of greatness inside of them. And I like to think that my seed of greatness, she watered it a little bit, if that makes sense. But fast forwarding to the production of Live, Learn, Lead Powerfully, one of the things that I had to do, I mentioned that emotional baggage, traumas and dramas, situations that I like to call for emotional baggage is problems that you don't have a solution for. So a lot of times, we all have our stories and rounds of situations where you really didn't quite understand how to deal with it. So you just kind of stuff it inside, you know, based on feelings, beliefs, opinions. And again, we can draw the line and plug in the blank, but I had a ton of that stuff, as many of us do. But it took me to open up that bag and share with other people. I got involved with counseling and got some accountability around me to help me to really deal with some of that poor decision making that I had accumulated, and some of the again, feelings, beliefs, opinions that I had about myself, meaning low confidence, low self-esteem. A lot of this stuff had kind of brewed up to this point. And this, thinking of 2012 to the release of Live, Learn, Lead Powerfully, to answer your question, the things that I discovered, the tips and techniques that I discovered to help me open that emotional baggage, share with other people, understand why was I making those poor decisions, you know, to put myself, like, for example, with that encounterment in that car accident. And I started discovering a lot of things. One of the things that I'm proud of is being a man of faith and allowing that relationship with God to accumulate. And so many things was just pouring as far as books and, again, mentors and coaches that I started attracting and failing over and over again. I'm going to get into a lot of that because, you know, with every blessing or every failure, there's a lesson involved. So out of all those lessons that I've learned, I was like, wow, it was like my brain was like a forest of information. And I met a publisher, Dr. Adele White, Johnson Publishing. She helped me create a garden with a lot of the information that I was, you know, developing and applying to my life to help me get to the point to where I was to publish Live, Learn, Lead Powerfully. Got a copy right here. And in this book is, again, tips and techniques that I use to overcome the alcohol abuse and other self-limiting beliefs. And this is the garden. This is the garden, those tips and techniques. And I put in the version for a teen leadership guide because I'm very passionate about young people and letting them know, hey, if Chaz can do it, you can do it. And again, that book made Amazon's #1 best-selling list back in 2019, and
Wow.
it's been impacting lives ever since. So, based off of me being on that other side of the coin, that greatest version of yourself. Yeah. So where did it cut me off at?
You had just told us that you had a bestseller on Amazon.
Yes. So yeah, Live, Learn, Lead Powerfully, best-selling book, and again, I mentioned how, you know, that whole information based off of this book was tips and techniques that I accumulated over those years to kind of overcome some of my self-limiting beliefs. Again, I mentioned that alcohol abuse, and happy to say at this point in my life, I've been over 9 years without a drink of alcohol. And yeah, so that we turned this into a teen leadership guide on some of the things that I discovered along my journey. So that's kind of what that best version of yourself, meaning, you know, we all have our stories, we all have our trials and tribulations that we deal with in our life. But if we can turn those into lessons and really become hindrance on growing our personal development, you can be your greatest version wherever you are in life. And no one's ever too small to be a difference maker now. So
Chaz, as we're thinking about the emotional baggage that you were just talking about, where did you find your sense of motivation and gumption to not let that negative emotional baggage define you, or to let these negative situations that you found yourself in define you? And how can you translate that same message to young people today when they are facing adversity? How do we encourage them to not let that situation define them?
And say that first part again, Abby, the first question.
Where did you find your sense of motivation or gumption, or however you would like to phrase it, to not let that adversity define you as an individual?
Wow, that's a really great question. So for me, I mentioned really becoming in a sense of surrendering, if that makes sense, of who Chaz Jackson was. You know, I mentioned that I had some low self-esteem, low confidence back in 2012. And I think one of the biggest things for me was to share And I think that's one of the key things for young people to take is really getting around someone that you like and trust, if that makes sense. Um, and it's not an easy process. It took a lot of failure for me to get to that point to where, because for me growing up, dating back to my childhood, I grew up in humble beginnings, if that makes sense. It was normal for me to see alcoholics. It was normal for me to see drug addicts. It was normal for me to see domestic violence. And again, we all have our stories, trials and tribulations, but it was taught in my environment that you should not share your emotional baggage, if that makes sense. Those things, those traumas, those dramas, those feelings, beliefs, and opinions that's going on, within your household or within your community that could, you know, expose you to a source of weakness, if that makes sense. If it was taught to me, like, if you really share your feelings, that was a source of weakness. But whenever I went on that journey of revealing that emotional baggage, I understood that was actually a source of strength, to really get people around you that's kind of going through some similar things. And I think that's another key source of motivation is seeking people that have similar occurrences, and one of those things for you to actually you know be revealed is talking. And when someone asks you how are you doing, and again, this would be different, like if you're in a drive-through at McDonald's or something like that, you don't really want to sit there and do 20-minute conversation. But in the book Living on Lead Powerfully, I talk about in my chapter, building healthy relationships and trust, the 3 B's, meaning being relatable, being predictable, and being exposed. So when we expose ourselves, to expose our real feelings, beliefs, and opinions that we have for ourselves. And this is what I discovered was, that's a source of strength, and it's also a way to build healthy relationships. So I feel like that's one of the things that will be, my key for our young listeners to understand as well, if they're seeking to understand how to really unlock that emotional baggage and really grow from it and learn the lessons that come out of it, instead of letting it be something, what I've done for many years, to be something that holds me back and be something that caused me to gravitate towards other idols. For me it was drinking at a young age, sexual activities, poor relationships, even. And I know James mentioned me being a collegiate athlete. I was a 3-sport athlete going up into playing at West Carolina University, but that was even like a source to carry that emotional baggage, if it makes sense, because I'll get out there and I can explode some of my frustrations out there on somebody. It was an amazing opportunity. I loved the sport of football. But just as an example, we can gravitate towards these idols to help us with the emotional baggage. But at the end of the day, those are only temporary, if that makes sense. The solutions are still not created. So it takes some work, and it takes you being honest with yourself. And that was something I had to really do.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful to be able to share from that experience, to be able to give a whole new generation some strategies and techniques that they can use to overcome the obstacles that they are encountering and overcome the solutions that they have. I noticed on your site too that when one of the speaking topics that you like to refer to is your I'm possible topic, where you talk about values and action. I love when people are talking about I'm possible. Oh, before we go farther, when you talk about seeds of greatness, that's a Ziegler quote. You were designed for accomplishment and engineered for success and endowed with the seeds of greatness. That's a Zig Ziglar quote. Cool. And when you said that, I was like, man, this is great. He's right up our alley with Ziglar. So
yeah,
we're going to throw, hey, look,
man.
you and I are both Maxwell certified too. We're going to have to throw some Maxwell quotes in here somewhere.
Oh yeah. Maxwell, man, we could talk about him all day. He's the guru for Papa John.
But both Maxwell and Ziglar are great for their being able to take complex situations and give us practical, easy to understand solutions. And I think that's what you've done with your book and with I'm Possible. That's something that people can listen to. So tell our audience what I'm Possible is, because they're sitting there going, okay, what does that mean? Am I possible? What does that mean? So tell them what it means and how they can, how they can feel like they're possible.
Yeah, so that whole equation, and I'm really pumped about that whole program. Pre-COVID, it was getting in front of, hundreds of students in the auditorium and using this formula, values plus action equals possible, meaning going back to what I was saying earlier, each and every one of us are gifted differently to make a difference, and no one is too small to be a difference maker right now. Anything that you can comprehend or understand, it is possible. You are possible. I am possible. And I love talking about the values plus action equals I'm possible, meaning values. So when I say values, definition I love to use is standards or beliefs that you choose to filter your life decisions through. So so I think research shows that a human can have over 80,000 thoughts a day. That's crazy, right? And thinking about a thought. So thoughts create actions and actions create consequences, right? So I have a thought that I'm hungry, right? What is the action? My action is to go to the refrigerator, right? And then me open up the refrigerator is going to create a consequence, right? It's either I'm going to find something that's not good, I'm going to find something that's good, I'm going to be fulfilled. But when I say value, so I want to paint a picture here of putting a bridge between thoughts and actions. So a bridge, and what I love doing with my young people is thinking of when we have a thought, what value is in between that thought and action, if that makes sense. And between that bridge, um, plugging in the blank, for me, a value is my family, right? So if I have the thought of hanging out all night, just throwing something out there at 12 o'clock, that thought, so when it comes across the bridge of a positive family life, that thought won't make it to an action because my value is family life, and I have my two girls, and I know I have to be there to help put them in bed and to cultivate them and get my daughter ready for school, for kindergarten the next morning. So yes, it's a thought, but because I have a value system in place, just using that for example, when that crossed the bridge of value, it's not going to make an action. And that's what I'm really passionate about, is helping young people, teachers, coaches, youth advocates, whoever is placed in my path, to really develop some core values that can help dictate their possible, if that makes sense, however that might look, and really control that and really take action and be really intentional about the actions that they do take. Because if we can really dictate our actions, Kentfield, he said in one of his books that success leaves clues, right? And and there's so many other details out there that meaning like your growth and your success is predictable. And if again, us getting a game plan in place, values, and really dictating those actions, whatever is set on your heart, your mind, your soul to accomplish, it can be possible. So
what do you think are some of the reasons why youth are struggling so much with overcoming these kind of obstacles and believing they're possible? What do you think is the core, from your experience? You're working with youth, you're working through ministry. What are you seeing as some of the issues that youth are facing that are causing them not to really believe I'm possible? Because, you and I, we're like personal development junkies. They bring it along. We're going to digest it. Abby's the same way. We feed on this stuff, but we have to live in the real world where we realize that the majority of the population does not believe in this. They doubt themselves, which we all doubt, but they really don't believe they are. What do you think are some of those core issues that they have?
that is a really good question. And I want to start with something that a quote that I love to say in a lot of my speeches. We perform at the level of our belief, not the level of our potential. So for me, it's really engaging with kids that, hey, you do have potential to do whatever your heart desires. We can draw the line and plug in the situations, circumstances that our kids are dealing with, and some are bad, worse than others. But you don't have to be a product of your environment. And I was talking about this a little earlier with a group of individuals of a story of when I worked with a middle school, 6th and 7th graders, and we was doing like a book study, and I had them do an exercise, and I gave them a sheet of paper, and we was talking about wearing masks. And this kind of goes back into the whole emotional baggage thing and really sharing. But on the front of that mask that's what we want people to see, right? Who we are when we walk out the door. And on the back of that sheet of paper was saying, what's behind the mask? What do you not want people to see? And I've actually done this with old adults as well. But I say that to say this: when all of the students did this exercise, they gave me that sheet of paper back. And it was amazing, like what was shared. So on the front of that sheet, some students said, I want people to know that I'm fun. I want people to know that I'm athletic. I want people to know that I'm cool to hang around, or whatever the case may be. But on the back of that sheet, a lot of the students, hey, they was like, I don't want people to know that I'm sad or I'm frustrated or my mom is, addicted to drugs, or, my dad's left home, or I don't have a good relationship with my siblings, or I don't truly like school. And I say that to say this is, for us to truly grasp our young people, and what I have discovered is we have to allow them to understand that they do have a voice, that they can talk. There's a lot of young people that I've encountered that just truly doesn't feel like they have anything quality to share, specifically like to the adults, if that makes sense. They feel that they're constantly being told what to do, how to do things, and they don't have a voice. So one of the biggest things for me to get a kid in the instance of, hey, you are possible, is that you do have a voice and you can share what's really going on in your life, with your feelings, your beliefs, your opinions that you have about yourself, about your family, about your school, about your sport, about your extracurricular activity, whatever the case may be. You have a voice right now. And I'm gonna keep saying this, that no one is ever too small to be a difference maker. So you can have a voice right now. Another story that comes to mind is working in physical therapy. I had a 14-year-old young lady. She had came in to rehabilitate her knee. This was some years back, but I mean, she did not want to follow along with anything that we said. Like, we'll tell her to do an exercise. I mean, she was so demotivated. I mean, there was times where her mom would try to motivate her. She was very disrespectful to her mom. She was just a bad attitude. There was some points where some of the therapists were like, look, we're gonna have to figure out a way to get this girl out of the clinic. Every time she's ready to come in, like, she demotivates me. I know it's gonna be a tough time to get her to do anything. And what I discovered, guys, and she actually made a transformational flip, and we was able to get her to do some of the exercise and really work on getting her knee better. Another subject was with her mom. That was a whole nother animal. But for her to get her to do her exercises, her understanding that she had a choice, and that's what it was. She had went through life so much where people was constantly telling her what to do. This is wrong. You shouldn't do that. Why don't you do it this way? Why are you acting this way? And she constantly had her finger pointed at her so much to where whenever we really strategically just gave her a choice, said, hey, do you want to do squats or do you want to do hip exercises? She responded a whole lot more better to that versus me just telling her what to do. She had some control over her life. And I personally use that story because there's a lot of young people that I've worked with that feel that they don't truly have control over their life. It's like they're a robot. And if they don't do what's required of them, then, they're devalued and they're not accepted. And that causes them to act out. So allowing our young people to have a choice in their life and just giving them a voice, those are two things that I truly have found to grasp them to knowing that they are possible and that they're fully motivated to strive after, making good grades and being more intentional about their quality of life at a young age.
Yeah, we're kind of hitting around on some topics here that I'd just be curious to see what both of you think of. It seems like some of the issues are that we have parents, well-intentioned parents, but that are hovering too much. So that helicopter parent, they're making too many decisions. They're afraid to let Johnny and Susie fail when it would have been better for them to fail at home early on the small things and learn from that, so that when they encounter the big things, they have developed those, coping skills, those kind of skills that they need. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? That's just when you said that, that's just what was coming to my mind. I was like,
Yeah, so for me, this even going back to my 5-year-old, she doesn't really like for me to pick out her clothes. Like she likes options.
dude, you're in trouble coming
Dude,
to
like
you.
I
She's
literally
already like
I
that.
have to hold up 2 outfits or just let her go do her own thing. Like she's she's like, no, I don't want that. Like I can show her one outfit, right? And she say no, but I can take that same outfit and go get another one and hold them up to her, and she'll pick that exact outfit. But it's because she had choice, and that's trickling on down to that young lady that I shared into the clinic. So it's something about just having some control over your life. And like you said, there's parents, they're well-meaning. Every parent is well-meaning, but there's certain things that we have to allow our young people to grow and learn. And like I mentioned before, within failures, in circumstances in that nature, there is some lessons and some growth in that. So we're gonna allow that to take place.
Well, that's a really interesting perspective, and I kind of want to shift gears just a tad. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given? This is my favorite question to ask everybody because they have such diverse perspectives. But what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Wow, that is a really, really good question. There's many things that's popping in my head right now. But I think I'm gonna take this exit. The best piece of advice, and I don't know if you ever heard of the author Don Miguel Ruiz. He wrote the book The Four Agreements. But one of his agreements is don't take anything personally. And I feel like that was one of the best advice I ever gotten. Don't take anything personally, because here's the thing behind that. You are a reflection of the story that you tell yourself, right? We all have a story that we tell ourselves in our minds, right? And based off of your own personal feelings, beliefs, and opinions, they don't necessarily line up with my feelings, beliefs, and opinions. So if I do something, I'm striving after a goal, or if I have an opinion about something, if you don't agree with that, I can't really take offense to that, right? I mean, like that is based on the story that you're telling yourself. So for me, I cannot take that personally. And for a long time in my life, if you didn't agree with me, I was wanting to argue with you. Like I want to convince you that, hey, I am right, you are wrong, and there's no other way around it. And that's something that I discovered later in life, that, hey, don't take things personally. What people say, what people do, the opinions that they have is based on agreements that they have in their own minds. And I have to respect that. And obviously when someone doesn't agree with you or you don't agree with someone else, there's always a lesson in that somewhere, some way or some fashion. So that was one of the first ones that popped in my head. Don't take anything personally, because it's not all about you.
That's probably one of the more practical answers to that question that we've gotten.
I would completely agree.
And one that probably needs to be hashtagged. We need to hashtag that and send that out and tweet it, or put it on. Don't take everything so personally.
Yeah, and this is easier said than done. I know it's easy for me to say that. We all have to renew our minds on a daily basis. But I truly believe, man, if we can learn not to do that, it can save us a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustration and sadness. And yeah,
I think back to young James, 12 years, 13 years old to 16 years old. I think I take too many things personally. And it was when I just started letting things roll off my back more that I started to seem to accomplish more of my own goals in life and began to move forward in more of a positive direction. But man, they're probably listening to this right now. So our youth audience from Texas, they're probably listening to it right now and going, yeah, that's easy for you guys to say. You're not going to my high school where, you have to live with these people. How am I not supposed to take it personally that they're going forward? So, would you agree on that, Abs?
Exactly.
Yeah, small towns, man. It's a little wonky sometimes, but I think it's still practical advice. Even
Guys, if our audience wanted to reach out to you, wanted to find more information about you, how can they connect with you? What's the best way?
Wow, the best way is between James and Abby, man. You can get to me through them, but yeah. So you could reach out to me through my website at chazjacksonspeech.org. You could also email me. That'd be the second best way at chazjacksonspeech.org. So that would be two of the best, or the 2 and 3 best ways outside of these two amazing individuals. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on your platform. And also, if anybody's listening right now, couple things. So I love giving away stuff. Chaz at chazjacksonspeech.org. If you tell me that you've listened to this recording and you reference Gen Z, I will love to send you a free copy of Live, Learn, Lead Powerfully. All right, that goes to the first person. And after that, I still want to give you something, even if you're not the first person that gets that book. I would love to send you some education on 3 ways to motivate yourself. It's like a short and concise, straight to the point ebook that has some amazing value to it as well. I got some really good responses from it. So 3 ways to motivate yourself ebook that could be available for you as well. So.
And if you guys missed that, we're going to put that in the show notes. We'll put that in the show notes, and we'll promote that offer through our social media when this comes out throughout the week and a half that we're promoting this as well. Is there any taglines or any particular signatures or stuff that they can connect with you on social media?
Most definitely. So at Chaz Jackson Speaks, you can find me on, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, like this.
They're all the same
right here did. Yeah. So yeah, definitely check me out. I would love to add value to you any way that you see fit. And yeah, also check out the podcast, Gift and a Gift. I love getting amazing guests on there to provide tips and techniques for young adults as they strive towards growing in personal development. And also, we actually released another book this year. So The Impact of Influence, that's also Amazon best-selling book. Check that out as well. That's this book here. So The Impact of Influence with Chip Baker. It was actually a total of 17 authors. We came together and put together that amazing curriculum, and that made Amazon's best-selling list. And we're so excited about that. So yeah, any way I can help and add value to you and help you become your greatest version of yourself, I'm here for you.
Well, thank you, Chaz, for joining us this week and being our guest. All the information that he just said is in the show notes. You guys can look down. You see where I'm pointing, guys? Yeah, that's where it is, audience. And Gen Z audience, join us again every Tuesday for a new show for at least the next month and a half. I know we've had a gap here, and you guys have been saying, hey, where are you at? But we've been promoting some other things. But we're back and going strong. Thank you, Chaz, for your time. Thank you, Abby, for joining us.
Thank you,
See you guys.